I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. Crochet corset, never ended up finishing it. Hi, my name is Nika, and today we will be tackling a task that I've been putting off for months now, and that is organizing my knitting supplies. We'll be going over my yarn stash, making sure it's all nicely organized and recorded into a database so I can always check exactly what yarn I have and what amount I have left. We'll be organizing all of my knitting needles, making sure that I don't have to dig through a tangled mess of needles every time I need to reach for a pair. We'll also be going over miscellaneous items such as gauge swatches, darning needles, stitch markers. The list goes on. We'll also go through any whips that I have just lying around, and we'll organize all of those items in some sort of systematic way. I'm not sure what that way is yet, but I'm hoping we'll figure it out as we go along. But to get started, I just need to get out all the supplies that I have lying around and take a good look at exactly what I have. And to get started, we're going to have to go down to the floor because that will give me the best access to my yarn supplies and other knitting supplies, and I'll show you why that's the reason. Hi, and welcome to the floor of my apartment. So let me show you how I'm storing my yarn and knitting supplies right now. It is all in this one shelf right behind me. So I hope you can see everything that I'm pointing at. But down here, I have two big boxes where I keep a lot of my yarn, and I think I have like some whips still in somewhere in here. I have some yarn lying around. I have this random box of candy that is now empty and contains my knitting needles as well as some gauge swatches. So we're gonna have to sort all of this out. And then I have two boxes right here as well as this container right here. This all contains yarn. This shelf is a mess. It's a combination of everything that I have that I don't know where to put. So we're gonna have to figure out a better sorting system. And if you look above there, I also have some yarn just like lying around together with a finished knit project that I just don't know where to put, and then just like some other miscellaneous stuff. So let me go through this whole shelf and take out anything knitting related and just dump it onto the carpet, and we'll go from there. And there is one other place that I keep my yarn. So you're currently looking under my desk, and that on the top left is a preview of another sweater that I'm knitting that I'll share with you in a future video. But if you look under my desk, I have this trolley cart that is supposed to be on wheels. It's supposed to be moving. It doesn't really move very well, but anyway, I keep some yarn and some whips there as well, so we're gonna have to empty that too. Now that I look at this giant pile of a bunch of yarn and unfinished objects and everything else, this is a bit overwhelming, but we're gonna try to sort this. I think I'm gonna make 3 piles. I'm gonna make a pile of just yarns that are not in use right now. Then I'll make a pile of whips and just random swatches and things like that. And then the third pile is going to be needles and any other knitting tools and whatnot. And lastly, I have this box right here that has some yarn scraps and thread and whatnot, and I think I'm gonna have to tackle that separately because there's just a bunch of small pieces in there, so I'm not gonna dump it all on the floor. But first, let's organize this giant yarn pile into smaller piles so I can go through them individually. So I have my giant pile of yarn, and I think I'm trying to figure out the best way to organize it. I think there's multiple approaches I can take. I can organize it all pretty by color. I could organize it by the type of yarn it is, like the, what is the name? Like if it's wool, cotton, blend, whatever. Or I could organize it by weight, so the thickness of the yarn. And I think I'm leaning towards that last one just because that's the most practical way, I think. Before I can do that, I think what's going to be best is if I go through every single skein and I record it in a database. And I'm thinking I'm just going to use Ravelry to record all my yarns, just so I have an understanding and an overview of exactly what types of yarns that I have, and then I can organize it from there, because this is just way too overwhelming to look at without having written down like what weight it is or what composition it is. The only problem is a lot of these yarns I bought maybe like 2-3 years ago when I was crocheting before I started knitting. And when I was doing that, I was buying a lot of no brand yarn from Daiso for very cheap. So a lot of these yarns I just kind of used randomly, and I would throw out the labels. So a lot of these yarns don't have the labels, which we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out somehow. So let me go onto Ravelry with my laptop and try to record all of these skeins somehow. I think this is going to take a while, but we have to push through. Today's the day we're doing this. Okay, to be honest, I don't know if inputting all the yarn into Ravelry helped me, but at least I've now sorted it into different piles, so let me walk you through those. So from the right, that is the thinnest yarn that I have, and then we're going sort of increasing yarn weight. We're going to that next pile, which I think is about 3mm needle size to be used for that. And then we're going to 3 to 4mm, 4mm, 5, 5 to 6, and then bulkier weights right here. And this pile right here is just yarn that I got from a old sweater that I had, which I'm not sure what the weight is. And to be honest, I can't be bothered right now to like measure what the weight is. I'm anyway going to store that separately. And then lastly, I have this pile down here, which I wasn't able to figure out what yarns these are because I don't have the labels anymore. So I'm just gonna sort of probably store them all together and keep them as scrap yarns. This is the situation, and I'm gonna try to keep different weights together. Maybe, I'm not sure. To be honest, I only have a couple of boxes that I can fill with yarn, so we're gonna have to try and figure out how these fit together. To be honest with you, I don't know if it was worth going through this whole pile of yarn because it took me like an hour and a half. And the realization that I made is that I just have a bunch of scrap yarn, most of which can't be used for real projects. And I've had most of this yarn for like 2 years now. I'm not using it. So I think I either have to figure out a scrap yarn project, probably like a crochet scrap yarn project, like a blanket or something, or a way to recycle all of these, because what I'm realizing is having all this yarn is like weighing on me and not letting me purchase yarn more purposefully for other projects that I want to make. So I'm going to organize it today, but I definitely have to think about what I'm going to do with all of this. But yeah, let's try to just put it into boxes and move on to other parts of organization, because we still have like needles left and other small bits and bobs. So let's get this done. I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore, but we can do it. We've got this. Okay, so I hope you can see that. We've filled in this box with a bunch of thin yarns. To be honest, I'm always very confused about which needle sizes correspond to which yarn weights. So I'm not sure if this is like fingering weight, but anyway, I think most of these are supposed to be used with 2 to 3 millimeter needles, so very thin yarns, and we're gonna keep them like this. This box doesn't close, or it doesn't stay closed, so we're gonna have to put something on top. But at least this box is done. And I have these 3 like rope yarns, which I think I'm gonna try and make maybe like a crochet bag out of these for summer, but I'm gonna put them in here for now. I actually started a sweater using this giant Aran, fashion Aran skein, but I realized that I absolutely hate the color choice, so I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with this yarn, but for now, I'm just gonna take this project off the needles and keep it in here. So this is full with some bulkier yarns, so starting from Aran and then going all the way up to super bulky. So that's one box done, and then we have one more box that we can fill in with the remaining yarns and some works in progress. So I have these 2 granny squares that I haven't used yet, so this is gonna go in here. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with this. I'm pretty sure I started like a scrap yarn hat and I never got around to finishing it, but today's not the day for figuring out what to do with that. I'm just gonna tuck that away and come back to this later. This is actually a finished object, so it's a crochet top, so I'm gonna put this somewhere else into storage. Same for these 2 hats. These are crochet hats, so these are gonna go somewhere else. This is also a crochet vest that I just need to weave in some ends, so that is going into storage. This is actually a hat that I made recently, going into storage as well. But this, I was trying to, I think, make a crochet corset, never ended up finishing it, so it's gonna go into storage for now. Maybe we'll come back to this at some point later. Same, this is like one of my very first crochet tops that I tried to make, never ended up finishing it. And same for this, another crochet type of top that I never finished. I'm just gonna put it all into this box, this big box for now, and see if maybe I can go back to this, unravel the yarn, and use it for some scrap project. And this last thing from this box is the love letter top that is currently on my needles, and I'm hoping to finish this for summer 2024. So actually this I'm gonna put into that trolley over there that has the Elisabeth blouse that is on my needles right now, as well as the yarn for the other project that you can see over there that I am working on. So this is also going to go into that trolley because I'm pretty sure that's become my actively working projects pile. And I'm also going to put this yarn into this pile because I'm planning to use this yarn for the Sophie scarf, which I'm hoping to make very soon. So I don't want to put it away into boxes. I'll keep this in reach. There's still some empty space, so I'm going to fill that in with these scrap yarns that I have nowhere to put. So I'm just going to chuck that in like this. This is not the perfect system, but I think this is going to do for now. And maybe once I figure out what to do with the scrap yarns, I will get back to these boxes. But I think this is going to work. So, brief overview. I now have 3 boxes. On the left here, you can see slightly bulkier yarns. On the right, some scrap yarns and thinner yarns, and some projects that I started but never finished that I had to unravel. Over there in the pink box are thinner yarns, and then that trolley that stays under my desk are for my current works in progress. So I think this is a good division for now, and I'm just gonna pop these back into the shelf where they're supposed to be staying. And now this last basket that I had some yarns in, I actually filled in with some finished objects. So some crochet, a crochet vest, a crochet top, some crochet hats. These are all summer pieces. So I'm just gonna pop this whole basket into my summer clothing storage. Okay, so now we have to tackle all of this mess. Let me get back to this box and the printed patterns a bit later because I want to organize the knitting needles first. I'm just going to move these needle stoppers and some stitch markers into here for now. So for needle organization, I was trying to figure out a way to keep them kind of less tangled and easier to access. I ended up finding this small folder that I thought I could use for needles, and I actually already started putting some needles in here. So I have both interchangeable needles and also just circular needles. And I already started putting interchangeable needle tips into here. So you can see that there is these plastic inserts that are divided into 2. So you can use 2 parts. And then if you go to the back, there are some plastic inserts that are just singular ones, and I already put some of the circular needles in here. So my plan is I want to sort my needles into these inserts by size, and I also have some sticky labels that I can put on top of each plastic insert to write down the size of the needles. As you can see, I already started filling this in. So what I'm going to do is get out all of these needles from here, and in the beginning I have all of my interchangeable needles, so I'm going to mark them by size, and then when we get to the second part, I'm going to put all of my circular needles in here and label them as well. So let's do that. So I have some stitch holders here as well that I'm going to put in at the end. So I'll put these aside. Ooh, oh, this is a mess. Okay. Okay, so I told you in the beginning I have some knitting gauge swatches as well, which for some reason are all hanging down here. So we're going to have to figure out where to put them. Okay, let's try to sort these. So I think our folder of needles is organized. So let me walk you through it. It's quite thick. In the beginning, I have some interchangeable needles, so I have them in the most common sizes that I use, which is 3, 3.5, and 4 millimeters. Then a cord for the interchangeable needles, and then some stitch holders. And then if we walk through to the other side, we have all the circular needles going from sizes 2.5 millimeters all the way to 8 and 12 millimeters. And for the smaller sizes, I generally have them in both short cord lengths and long cord lengths in the same insert. So when I close it, this is quite a thick folder, but I can still close it, and then if I keep it upright, then nothing is going to fall out, and it's going to be very easy for me to reach for the needle size that I need in the moment. So I'm really happy to finally have this done. The last things we have to organize is I have these random swatches. I have this organizer for stitch markers and whatnot, and a bunch of stitch markers are here in this container where I keep my measuring tape. So I want to move some of these back into this organizer. And I have a few printed patterns and this giant box with some miscellaneous stuff and bits and bobs. So I think the swatches are probably going to go in here, but I want to go through this once more and just kind of rearrange everything and see if there's anything that I can throw out. Okay, so now this box is filled with just thread and like buttons for crochet toys when I was making those, and any like buttons, elastics, and such. And also some really tiny bits of scrap yarn that I could maybe still use. And then the smaller bits I'm just gonna have to recycle. So lastly, I'm gonna put these two patterns that I only have printed into this box so that I can keep them. And this box is done. Now I have a bunch of gauge swatches and whatnot, and I honestly don't know what to do with them. Please tell me if you guys have any uses for these. Do you unravel them? Do you just recycle them? What do you do with these? Because I have no idea what to do with this pile. I think for now I'm just going to put it into a plastic bag and maybe put it back into this box and figure out how to get rid of them? Question mark? So now the very last piece is I just want to make this a little bit more empty. There's a bit too much going on right now, so I like to keep just a few stitch markers and maybe needle stoppers here, but I don't need that much, so I'm going to put some of these back into this organizer, and yeah. Also, I have these really cute needle stoppers from Bana. Look how cute they are. That was a roller coaster. I'm pretty sure that took me multiple hours to go through my whole yarn stash and all my knitting supplies. I was able to record all of the yarns that I have in Ravelry. So now I have a much better understanding of exactly what yarn I have. I was able to organize my knitting needles into a folder, so I have easier access to them. Even though there's no dramatic after that I can show you, I still feel very accomplished and much more organized, and I feel like there's like a weight lifted off my shoulders. It feels much better to know exactly what I have in my knitting supplies and have an organized system. That being said, after going through the yarn stash today, my main takeaway was that I have a bunch of scrap yarn, but I don't really have much yarn that can be used for bigger projects, which makes sense because a lot of the yarn that I have, as I mentioned, is from 2-3 years ago when I was just doing crochet, random small things. So I need to figure out a way to use the scrap yarn. So I'm definitely looking for scrap yarn projects, probably crochet ones. I'm probably not going to be knitting anything, but I might make like a crochet scrap yarn blanket or pillowcase, or I don't know. If you guys have any ideas for scrap yarn projects, please do share those with me. I'm desperately looking to get rid of my stash, and I kind of feel bad just throwing all of it out, and I'm not sure what would be the best way to recycle it. So I'll be definitely on the lookout for some ideas on how to use up that stash. And I think I've been holding a lot of guilt over buying new yarn because I kept thinking, well, I have a lot of yarn at home, but now that I've gone through it, I realized that most of it is not usable for the purposes that I use yarn these days. These days, I tend to stick to bigger knit projects like knit sweaters, and my preference in yarn has changed a lot over the years since I started with crochet. So a lot of that yarn is just not usable for the purposes of my current life. So I think this has allowed me to let go of that guilt a little bit more and just be understanding that my needs and my wants and my preferences have changed. That being said, thank you very much for hanging out with me today and allowing me to get through this tedious task. I probably would have given up if I wasn't recording this because it got very overwhelming, but I am glad I've done it, and I hope that it maybe inspired some of you guys to organize your own stash. If you guys have any tips on organizing your knitting supplies that you would love to share with everyone, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I hope this becomes a space where we can share tips and tricks and maybe ideas on how we keep our space creative and not overwhelming. Once again, thank you very much for watching today's video and hanging out with me. Please do keep an eye out for the next video in which I will go over some of the projects that I've been working on this winter and my knitting goals for spring. I will update you on the status of the Elisabeth blouse, on which I've been working on for multiple months. And if you're curious to hear about that progress and watch me attempt to finish that project, there is a video right here that you could check out. I also have another really exciting project that I'm working on right now, and I can't wait to share it with you guys in that next video. Until then, I hope you stay healthy and happy, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye!